Hey everybody, welcome back. We're gonna pick up where we left off, and this time I think we're gonna start with Carlos and Jimmy. Although it had just suffered a fire, Pitt Street 99 was still open for business. It was a small and old building. The walls were covered with flyers and graffiti. I walked through the main gate and saw a narrow staircase. There was also a small desk at the bottom of the stairs facing the entrance. A man with spiky hair was sitting behind the desk with his legs crossed. He put down the magazine, which had a woman with big breasts on the cover, and asked what I was doing there. I told him that a man in a long black trench coat had told me to come here. Trench coat? Everyone here wears a trench coat. I'm telling you, this is not some place that you can just walk in. You better get out of here before I stab you with a knife. Spiky Hair picked up the magazine again. I tried to recall what the guy looked like. White shirt, gray vest, short black hair that was combed to the back. He also had a big guy in a black suit with a scarred face by his side. A scarred face? Mr. Tough? Hold on. Does the guy you're talking about have his right hand? Spiky Hair put down his magazine and his legs, leaning towards me, and asked quietly, "Right hand?" I couldn't remember exactly, but I did remember that he had picked up my phone with his left hand. He shouted upstairs, "Mr. Khan, the guy you've been waiting for is here." I looked at the staircase with anticipation. However, the man who came down was not the one I had met. He was wearing a leather jacket and a pair of sunglasses. He had high cheekbones and he looked much older. He took me all the way to a suburb on the back of his motorcycle. Mr. Khan spoke very fluent English. He told me that the building we had just been in was the headquarters of the Black Dragon Gang, the biggest gang in Hong Kong, and the person who had told me to come was the second in command of the gang. He had instructed Mr. Khan to induct me as a pledge. A pledge was a potential candidate to join the gang. But before officially admitting me, Mr. Khan had to make sure if I was qualified. Mr. Khan put a gun in my hand. I was stunned. "You don't have to do it. If you are not willing to do this, we can leave right now. You'll just pretend that you've never met me." Mr. Khan took a small metal box out of his pocket and threw a piece of gum in his mouth. "No, I'll do it." I couldn't let go of any chance to find Alicia. Besides, I had a brilliant idea. I went into the convenience store nearby. Most of the goods on the shelves seemed to be used goods. Some of them were covered with a thick layer of dust. The owner looked like he was over 60. He was reading a book behind the counter. It was just the two of us in the store. I walked up to the counter, smashed my left hand down on it, lifted the gun with my right hand, and pointed it at his head. I yelled in my meanest voice, "Give me all your money, or I'm gonna blow your head open." Then I whispered to the old man about what was going on, making sure that Mr. Khan wouldn't be able to hear me. I was so nervous, even though I had no intentions of robbing him for real. I handed him what was in my hand. "Please." The owner put down his book and looked at me pleadingly. "We need the money here for my wife's hospital bill. I can't give it to you. Everything else in this shop, if you like, is all yours. All yours, please, please." Apparently, he had only heard my threats, not my whispers. Tears rolled down my face. I must have lost my mind to be robbing a poor old man like this. Even if it was all fake, I never should have done this. I handed the gun to the owner and loudly told him why I was there and what I had been through. To my utter surprise, after hearing my story, the owner offered to help me, ask about my sister, and even asked if I would be willing to stay here and help out in the store. He said I was welcome to stay as long as I didn't mind the little wage he could afford. I gave the old man a huge hug. Outside the store, Mr. Khan had already left. I would never see him again. I started working at the store while looking for information about Alicia. Days went by, but I still hadn't heard anything. Lord, what should I do to find my sister? Should I have joined the gang instead? Carlos. Carlos's stories are so, like, intense. It's like a telenovela. Alright, let's get to our weird introvert. I'm not going to say he's my favorite otaku. I have other otakus that I like. But hopefully he can be redeemed. My mother had always complained that I never exercised. She would always say that if I ever needed to run away from bad guys, I would be dead in just a few steps. There were not that many bad guys in the world. Besides, even if there were, I think I could just stay in my room and not go outside. It is the information era, after all. As long as I can get information online, I can play with the real world in the palm of my hand. Yet, even though I managed to dodge all of the recruiting activities for the school sports meet, my roommate had totally ruined my perfect plan. Today was the all-school sports meet. I thought I could have made up an excuse like a foot injury so that I wouldn't even have to sit under a tree and I could just stay in my room and play on my computer. But Rocky had signed me up for the 4x400 relay race without me even knowing about it, and now I had to stand under the scorching sun. 400 meters. Madness. The last time I had been in a race, I was still in elementary school. I hadn't even hit puberty. I thought I might die on the track today. The gun went off. I took it from his hand. I never knew that Rocky was so fast. Our team was actually in first place during his third leg run. Still, why was I the final leg? What were people thinking? There was nothing else I could do but run like my life depended on it. The people along the tracks were cheering for me. I couldn't really tell who they were, but this actually felt pretty great. I was only 50 meters from the finish line, and no one had caught up with me yet. I must have underestimated myself. Ha ha ha. Look at me, Mom. Your son is about to win a race. I looked straight ahead to the finish line. Then I saw her. I saw my crush. Oh no. Don't distract me at such a moment. It was too late. I had only lost my focus for 1 second, and the tip of my foot tripped over a bump on the track. My entire body left the ground, and then my face smashed into the ground. By the time I got back up, the other teams had all run past the finish line. Oh no, Jimmy. Alright, so we gotta get Jimmy to win the race or have the race. In these 2 letters, there are some special restrictions. Special restrictions? Yes. Remember I told you that the white pieces could be moved anywhere, except past the first and last black pieces in the letter, of course. Yes, I do remember. When special restrictions are in place, that will no longer be the case. If you put I handed him and I caught it from both on the left side, then the former has to happen after the latter, because you can't hand the baton over and then have it back again. Furthermore, if you put the gun went off piece on the left side too, it has to happen before the match begins. So there is another sequence restriction on these pieces too. All sequence restrictions are labeled by a number. The pieces with the smaller numbers cannot be placed after the pieces with the larger numbers. Since the affirmation restrictions only apply to the left side, there is a straight vertical line in the middle of the red diamond, and the number is marked on the left side of the line. Oh boy, I'm completely lost. Haha, that's not all. In addition to sequence, there are other special restrictions such as conflict. We'll deal with that when we see it. For now, you just need to remember that all of the pieces with special restrictions will be labeled with a red sign like this on the right side. Okay, then I'll try my best to remember them. Alright, so... let's see if the gun goes off and the race begins. We'll move Jimmy from the final lap to handing the baton to Rocky. And then I Hopefully Carlos takes the money. I finally handed the baton off to the next leg. If I had to take one more step, I was going to throw up blood and die right there, right then. Our team was in second place. It was all up to Rocky now. Rocky soon finished the first 200 meters, but something didn't seem right. Had he eaten something bad today? In the end, not only did Rocky fail to pass Class 2, he was eventually passed by Class 4, 10 meters away from the finish line. Sigh, that sucked. Although being part of this actually felt pretty great. The owner was so frightened that he was shaking. He immediately took the few large bills out of the drawer and handed them to me. Apparently, he had only heard my threats, not my whispers. Looking upon a 60-year-old man with an ailing wife at home, crying and begging me to spare his life, I could barely hold the tears in myself. Mr. Khan took the money from my hand with a satisfied look on his face. I was then admitted into the Black Dragon Gang. A few days later in the evening, I took a motorcycle from someone else in the group and came back to the store. I stuffed all the money I had borrowed for the past few days under the rolling door of the store. Sorry, and thank you, Mr. Owner. Okay, so we're gonna have to do Jimmy's again. Because 3 has to go before the 1. Yeah, I can't go before. We do please. I finally handed the baton off to the next leg. If I had to take one more step, I was going to throw up blood and die right there, right then. Our team was in second place. It was all up to Rocky now. Rocky soon finished the 200 meters, but something didn't seem right. Had he eaten something bad today? Let's go, Rocky! Go, go, go! I'll buy you ice cream! Not now that I had participated. I wanted us to win too. I couldn't help but start cheering Rocky on. Many of the people around me were cheering for him too. I never knew that participating in this kind of event could actually feel pretty great. Rocky suddenly sped up. He finally ran past Class 2 with 10 meters left. With 10 meters left, he crossed the finish line first. Well done. We were happily hugging and shoving each other near the finish line. My stomach hurt a little. Can we do barbecue instead of ice cream? You're funny. I pushed Rocky aside and caught a glimpse of someone. It was my crush. And she was looking at us. And she was smiling. Wow. I never knew I could get this kind of reward by participating in the meet. I felt so happy. So happy. Hey, we did it. Okay. And then we have Jimmy and Lei Wen. Let's see what new letters we have coming in. See, here we have a new person and another thing for Carlos. Let's do Lei Wen and Jimmy's first. I'm Lei Wen, a senior at Yingyan High School. Today, the new art teacher assigned me as his assistant for the class, so I had to stay after class and clean up the art classroom. I tried to sneak a few peeks at this strange teacher while I was reluctantly mopping the floor. He was looking over the sketches that had been left in the room one by one and then throwing them in the trash. It was just the two of us in the room. Neither of us was talking. Hey, Hey, W, how was your first day? It was my homeroom teacher, Miss Yang, who burst into the room and broke the silence. She said hello to me and held on to Mr. Wen's arm like a little girl. According to what I had heard from Jing, Mr. Wen and Miss Yang went way back. It was also Miss Yang who had recommended Mr. Wen for the newly vacant teaching position. The beautiful Miss Yang was said to be notoriously hard to get. Many male teachers in the school had allegedly been turned down by her. Was she involved with Mr. Wen? I grabbed the trash can and deliberately left the room. When I got back, there was no one there anymore. Someone appeared to have already replaced the barrel of the water dispenser too, for the water dispenser too. It seemed that I could finally go home. Yay! It was starting to get dark when I finally finished cleaning the classroom. I walked out of the school gate and noticed that Mr. Wen was walking not too far in front of me, going in the same direction. That was strange. I thought he had left a while ago. I didn't want to talk to him, so I stayed behind at a distance, quietly watching his back. Such a bad-tempered and terribly dressed man. How exactly did he become a teacher again? Before I knew it, Mr. Wen had walked into the dark alley that led to my place. However, as soon as I stepped into the alley myself, I suddenly felt that something was wrong, and I immediately backed out. Mr. Wen had been stopped by two men, one in front of him and the other behind him. The one facing my direction was wearing a tank top. He flashed a pocket knife in Mr. Wen's face. I hid behind the counter, I hid behind the corner, and tried to peek around it. Mr. Wen took out his wallet and handed it over without any resistance. That was smart. I thought, better safe than sorry. The tank top guy fiddled with the wallet for a while, then slammed it on the ground. 20? Do you think I'm a fucking beggar? He punched Mr. Wen in the face. Mr. Wen stumbled back and bumped into the guy behind him. He was still not resisting. The tank top guy placed his knife on Mr. Wen's face. Be smart. Give me all your money. Judging from the look on his face, maybe that 20 yuan really was all Mr. Wen had. We were too far away from the main street, and there was no one else around who could help. I suddenly had an idea. I took my racket out of my bag and grabbed a tennis ball. This was the time to test the result of all my nightly practices. Ball toss. Backswing. Please hit the target. Please. The ball was flying at a speed of 180 kilometers an hour. A gust of wind suddenly swept by. The ball was blown off its path by the wind, and it missed the target. Instead, it hit the back of Mr. Wen's head. Girl, what is it with you in the back of the head? You are always hitting people in the back of the head with the ball. Mr. Wen fell down to the ground with a thud like a brick. The two men noticed me, and they seemed to be just as shocked as me. They must have thought I wanted to kill the man lying on the ground for some reason. The tank top guy took one step towards me. I began to picture how they would force me into the corner, pull a chainsaw out from behind them, girl, always a chainsaw, and cut me to pieces. Oh no, I can't stay there any longer. I couldn't stay there any longer. I'm sorry, Mr. Wen. I screamed silently in my head and ran away with my hands covering my face, leaving Mr. Wen there by himself. The next day, Mr. Wen did not come to class. The school put out an announcement saying that he had been badly injured during a robbery and that he was in a coma at the hospital. Dang, girl. The announcement had also reminded the students to be careful on their way back home. It was all my fault. I should not have left him alone. There must be a better way. Lei Wen. Okay. Next letter. Sad is that Lei Wen reminds me a lot of myself, especially when she's being overdramatic. Because I totally also had a moment in high school where everything was a chainsaw-wielding maniac going to, hack me into pieces. My name is Jimmy. I'm a transfer student. I arrived in Beijing not too long ago, and now I'm a senior at Ying'an High School. The reason I chose the school was because I had a serious crush on a girl here. Just a few days ago, I was fortunate enough to be her partner in a doubles tennis match on my first day at the school. At first, I was so thankful that I had thought the goddess had finally smiled upon me. Yet I was totally embarrassed because I had never played tennis before. After that happened, I made up my mind. I was determined to improve my tennis skills, just in case I had another chance like this. That's good, he's working on his skills. I adjusted the serve speed on the ball machine, walked back to the baseline, raised my racket, and got ready. In order to get better, I had bought a season membership at a club. I even finished watching all 178 episodes of the Kid of Tennis anime. I had complete faith in myself. I believed I could make it work this time. The next time I got to play with her, I would show off my kick serve, my pickup volleys, my drive D, and even my zero-style slices to her. think those are just anime moves made up. And she would look at me with admiration. The ball machine shot the ball out with a pung. The ball was flying at 140 kilometers an hour. Ah! What a sneaky machine. How dare it serve the ball when I wasn't paying attention? Oh my gosh, my wrist really hurts. The doctor said that I had hurt my tendon. I needed to rest my right hand for at least a month. He said I should not even use a mouse, not to mention playing tennis. No! Doctor, I want to play. My dear goddess of fortune, if you can hear me, please heal my wrist. If it's necessary, I'll even swear off video games for a month as a sacrifice to you. Please. Jimmy. Alright. In this letter, there is a conflict, special restriction, which we talked about before. For instance, in these two letters, the two pieces, 140 kilometers and 180 kilometers, are in conflict with each other. That means they cannot be moved to the same side. If you try to do so, they will automatically switch places with each other. Both pieces are labeled with a double-headed arrow, which stands for conflict. This one is much easier to understand, isn't it? Huh, don't worry. You'll get used to all of these red signs eventually. Okay. Okay then, I'll try my best to remember them. Okay. So, I think we'll just move this one over. And hopefully she won't hit him in the back of the head. I shuddered a little. Before I realized it, the ball was already right in front of me. I was so startled that I had to awkwardly block the ball with the racket. And I accidentally hit the sweet spot. It actually felt really great. Wait, had I just hit it? Yes, I had. I had just hit an underspin shot. Oh wow, I had learned how to hit an underspin shot. Banzai! Banzai! I jumped up and down with excitement. People nearby were shooting me admiring, strange looks. What does banzai mean? Was he hurt? No. Banzai is a Japanese phrase. It means hooray. Although, based on my observations, lots of people outside of Japan use this word as well. They are from many different countries, and most of them are men. Oh, and they share another common characteristic. What is that? They are all single. Single? What's wrong with being single? Everything. Being single hurts. Huh. In the end, bonsai still means hurt, right? See? Bonsai means being single, and being single means it hurts. This is very straightforward. I think I'm single too. Bonsai. The ball hit the forehead of the tank top guy, exactly as I planned. He fell down to the ground with a thud like a brick. Before the second man realized what had happened, I sprinted towards his back as fast as I could. I smashed his head with my racket with all of my strength. Then I grabbed Mr. Wen's hand and ran towards the end of the alley. 10 minutes later, I was panting heavily and realized I had already run all the way back to my apartment building. Oh, and I was still holding Mr. Wen's hand. Mr. Wen, excuse me. This is where I live. I quickly let go of his hand. Well, I might as well do a home visit then, shall we? Home visit? For a senior? By an art teacher? Mr. Wen, actually, there is no one else home. I walked in front of him and explained. Do your parents always work late? Mr. Wen looked down at me while climbing up the stairs. The sunlight coming through the windows in the hallway was making him squint. No, I live alone. I stopped in front of room 413, but Mr. Wen didn't follow me. He stopped in front of room 414. He pointed to the door next to him with his thumb and smiled. I suddenly remembered. The first day after I moved in, the manager, Uncle Sun, had told me that a very famous artist from abroad had been living in the apartment next door. So that was him. We had actually met each other before. Yay, we got that one pretty quick. Okay. So we'll see. Let's meet this character and continue with Carlos's telenovela. My name is Park Sung-gun. Park Sung-gun. I'm 12 years old. I live in Korea. My home was on a hill. There was a lot of similar old houses on that hill, and the one that was the highest was my home. There were good and bad things about living there. The good thing was, since our house was so high up, we got to be further away from the other houses, so we had a big yard. However, I had to climb the stairs for over half an hour every day just to go and buy my dad a bottle of vodka at the convenience store at the bottom of the hill. If I didn't go, my dad would get angry. He would beat me with his belt. It wasn't just me either. He would also hit my mom, too. I never understood why he would do that. I just wish that if we could just figure it out. I just wish that if we could figure it out, maybe Mom wouldn't have to be beaten anymore. Dad was a road construction and maintenance worker. He used to come back home with mud all over his clothes. But for the past 2 months, he always came home clean. Sometimes he would bring back some money and give it to my mom. Other times, though, he would take some money out of the pot where we kept our food money. Mom always worked very hard. She had to wash a lot of clothes and sheets during the day for other people. She said she was getting paid for washing them. I really wanted to help Mom, but I was too short. I couldn't even reach the pole where she hung the clothes and sheets to dry. Alex came by today. He lived on the hill, too. Alex was Russian, just like Mom. They both had blonde hair and blue eyes, just like me. The other kids who lived nearby didn't like me at all. They always said that I looked weird. Only Sun Mi, Sue Mi, from the bakery would play with me. She had once told me that she wanted to open a cake shop together with me, but I didn't like cakes. There was an ant nest in our yard. I was watching the ants carrying things into their nest. I bet they must have a very big home. Suddenly, it started raining. A large raindrop almost blocked the entrance to the nest. I went back inside to get an umbrella, then I came back and covered the nest. Mom and Alex were taking the sheets back inside. Then Dad came home. He was Korean. He had black hair and brown eyes. He was back earlier than usual today. He saw Alex there and kicked the umbrella away. Alex left. Mom went into the house with Dad. I followed them inside as well. You slutty bitch! Dad slapped Mom on the face and pushed her to the floor. He took a rope out from the cabinet. The rope was wrapped around her neck and choked her. 5 minutes later, I grabbed onto Dad's arm with my whole body, but I couldn't stop him. He was too strong for me. Dad kicked me in the stomach and shoved me off of him. I fell and crashed into the corner of the room. Bastard! Dad called me that word a lot. I used to ask Mom what it meant. She told me that it just meant bad child. Dad finally let go. Mom collapsed onto the floor, but she didn't get up. It was as if she had fallen asleep. I tried to shake her awake. I tried as hard as I could and shouted as loud as I could. She would not wake up. I heard the door open behind me. I turned around. Dad had run out. I didn't know where he was going. I held onto Mom's arm and cried. Why? I had always been a good child. God, please let Mom wake up. I promise I'll be an even better child. I promise I'll never be a bastard ever again. Park Sung-gun. Aww. That's sad. I had been a member of the Black Dragon Gang for 2 months, but I was still yet to officially meet Mr. Lin. Mr. Lin was the second in command of the Black Dragon Gang. We met once on the day of the fire at Pitt Street 99. He was also the one who had me inducted into the gang. I thought I would be able to get some information about my sister once I joined the gang, but soon I had found out that everyone in my group, including our leader, Mr. Khan, knew nothing about her. As for Mr. Lin himself, he rarely even ever came to number. As for Mr. Lin himself, he rarely ever came to number 99 in person. Still, there were some upsides from joining the gang. At least I didn't have to worry about room and board anymore. My Cantonese was also improving a lot. Besides, not everyone in the gang was as scary as one would expect of a gang member. Ren was one of the nice guys. I belonged to the group loyalty team. The group oversaw the loan business, so we were essentially the loan sharks in the gang. Now that I had become a member, I couldn't just coast along without doing anything. But I also didn't want to do wrong things. I had told Ren about my predicament during one of our conversations. Ren then told Mr. Khan that he wanted to bring me along when he went debt collecting. Every time we went, Ren would whisk the kids of the families away first. Then I would tear apart their old clothes, spill some chicken blood on them, and mail the clothing to the debtors. Once we were sure that the debtors had received the bloody clothes, Ren would then make a phone call. "Hey, you've got the package, right? I'm giving you 3 days. If you still don't have our money, you will be getting more than just clothes next time." He sounded like Uncle Wang, the big butcher at the street corner with a violent attitude. The afro on his head would bounce 3 times with a rhythm every time he yelled at his customers. As soon as he put down the phone, he would immediately turn into a preschool teacher and go play with our hostages, who were wearing the new clothes we had just bought them. Ren would get scolded by Mr. Khan every once in a while. He said Hong Kong was too small of a place. If everyone learned how group loyalty handled the business, it would become more and more difficult to collect the money. But Ren never took it seriously. Ren knew that I had come to Hong Kong to find my sister. Even though he couldn't help much, he would always allow me to go out and look for her whenever there weren't any assignments. Every time Mr. Khan asked about me, he would also cover for me. Just like today, I had been out asking around the whole morning, but I still got nothing. When I got back to number 99, everyone in the group seemed to have a strange smirk on their faces. Ren said they were going to go and get a massage, and they had been waiting for me to come back so that they could put me on watch duty. I laughed knowingly. "Help yourself to the beer on the table. I paid for those. We're off." Oh, and I almost forgot. There was someone in the room whom Mr. Khan had told us to keep an eye on. Don't let her get away. Then they left. A girl was tied to a chair in the corner of the room. Although there was a cloth stuffed into her mouth, she still seemed very pretty. She looked Asian, but she had dark skin like mine. Her eyes were thin and curly like a pair of new moons. Her shining black hair draped down from her head like a dark waterfall, and she was wearing a purple short skirt. It looked that the skirt had been torn on its side. Well, if Mr. Khan wanted her watched, then I should just watch her. No need to think too much about it. I slapped my cheeks to keep myself alert. I raised the bottle. Then a rope snapped. I was reading the labels on Ren's beers when I heard the sound of rope snapping. Before I could turn around, I felt a hand strike the back of my neck. I blacked out. I didn't know how long had passed. A bucket of cold water was thrown in my face. I woke up with a shudder and opened my eyes. I saw Mr. Khan standing right in front of me. Everybody was back in the room. They all had a terrible look on their faces. I looked to the corner again. The chair was still there, and there were 2 halves of a rope on the floor. The girl was gone. Oh crap, I had made a terrible mistake. Ren tossed a knife over to me and looked away. I had not been in the group for long, but I knew the rules. If I wanted to stay, I had to do this. I bit my lip hard and cut off my left pinky finger. Half of the bloody finger dropped to the floor. Blood was still gushing out. It hurt like hell, but I was a man. I didn't make a sound. Who on earth was that girl? If only I had been more alert. Why did he cut off his own pinky finger? It's a ritual in the Mafia and some gangs. If you make a mistake, you must cut off your own pinky finger. Some gangs might even make their new members cut it off before officially joining.
What? That's so scary.
Carlos. Okay, so we gotta save the boy's mom, and we gotta stop her from the rope snapping. Let's try this way. Mr. Khan had come back. He pulled up a chair in front of the girl and sat down. He began asking her questions. The others had come back from the massage as well. We were all standing next to the wall. No one dared make a sound. From Mr. Khan's questions, I learned that the girl's name was Yi. Mr. Khan had only met her recently. Mr. Khan had even bought her an apartment. Mr. Khan was a tough man, but he had always been very gentle to women, and he had never slept around either. Therefore, he couldn't tolerate being betrayed by his woman. A few days ago, he had found out that Yi had been hanging out with people from the Blood Gang. He began to suspect that she had been approaching him with other intentions. He decided to find out the truth. Mr. Khan dumped a bucket of ice water on her head. The air conditioning had been set to max power and at 16 degrees Celsius, and it was blowing directly at her. Every time she would not answer a question, he would cut off some of her hair or slap her in the face. Yi was quite tough, though. Her mouth had started bleeding, almost all of her hair had been cut off, and she still hadn't spoken once. But Mr. Khan was tougher. He sent Ren to fetch him a bottle of white flower oil. He twisted off the cap, forced Yi's eyes open, and was about to drop it into her eyes. Yi was shaking uncontrollably, and tears were welling out of her eyes. She was finally broken. Mr. Khan was right about everything. Yi was not just a member of the Blood Gang. She was also the niece of their big boss, Mr. Cheng. But that wasn't what had angered Mr. Khan the most. Yi hadn't seduced him to infiltrate group loyalty for our loan business. She was only trying to get closer to the other groups of the Black Dragon. She had only chosen Khan because he was single, and therefore an easier and more convenient target for her. The Blood Gang had never cared about the loan business at all. Mr. Khan was outraged, feeling incredibly insulted. "Carlos, take care of this bitch. Never let me see her again." I must stop Dad. I climbed up onto the table and smashed the vodka bottle onto his head. He suddenly stopped and fell to the ground on his back. Something dark and red was coming out of Dad's head and onto the floor. Mom sat back up. Her face was pale, like a piece of paper. She coughed violently for a while and cried. I carefully climbed off of the table and ran into her arms, just like I always did. Every time Dad lost his temper, we would huddle together like this. It was the only way we could make ourselves feel better. I didn't know what Dad would do to us when he woke up. I wished I had never had a dad like him. Park Sang-gun's story is so sad. Why is his father so cruel? Why would someone kill his own wife? Thank goodness we could help him.
Who knows? Maybe his father was mentally ill. Humans are easily stressed. Some people would ease their stress by exercising, overeating, or smashing things. Some people, however, become twisted.
He was so young. If only he hadn't had a father like this.
If he hadn't had his father, he would not have existed.
You're right. Does that mean I had a father too?
You are a god, so of course not. Don't overthink it. Get back to work.
Okay. Oh. Park Sang-gun's story is like super sad. Oh wow. So did we miss anybody? Nope. Okay. So we're going to do these two last, and then we're going to call it quits. I was a stray kitten. Daddy called me Spotty. Daddy was like a daddy to me. He was an older homeless cat. He was an older homeless cat who had always taken care of me. Ever since he found me, he would always bring me with him wherever he went. He had given me a name, too. He had told me it was because of the yellow spots on my tail. Whenever we found some goodies, Daddy would always let me have the first bite. He would stroke my head and tell me, "Kiddo, help yourself. You're only 3 months old. You need more food to grow up." I always liked Daddy the best. The day Daddy was going to take me to the hill and catch some birdies, but it started raining heavily. Daddy said that because of the rain, the birdies wouldn't come out of their sun bath today. So we had to go back to the streets like yesterday and look for some goodies to eat. I hoped we could find more tasty chicken legs and fish steaks, meow. Unlike in the wild, there are many, many two-legged animals walking on the street. Daddy told me they are called humans. Because of the humans, the street was always very crowded all day and all night. Sometimes when we came to a place where there were a lot of humans, a few female humans would excitedly meow at me. "What a cutie!" And if I let them touch my head with their paws, I could often get some goodies too. But Daddy always warned me to keep my distance from them. Daddy said that humans are not to be trusted. The street was just across the road. I could see the shop with the fish sign from here. But we had to wait for the light to change. Daddy explained that the traffic law in Korea are very strict. There is over 20,000. If we were caught, even if we turned in all of our hidden dried fish treats, it wouldn't be enough. The fine is over 20,000. If we were caught, even if we turned in all of our hidden dried fish treats, it wouldn't be enough. And there were many iron beasts running so fast in the street. Daddy said those beasts are made by humans, and they are called cars. They are very dangerous, and we must be careful not to get hit. So we must obey the law, meow. The light finally turned green. I sprinted a little and went ahead. Daddy followed me slowly. He was a little old, and he had been injured before, so he couldn't see very well. A beast near us suddenly let out a roar of bang, and smoke came out from under it.
Cats? Do they have pointy ears and a long tail?
Yes.
And they know how to watch the traffic lights?
Yes.
They know how to write letters, too.
Good question. Maybe they can write in their own language. We are gods, so we will always receive the translated version of their letters.
That's fascinating. I wonder what the original letter looks like.
The beast seemed to have suddenly become shorter, and it was charging directly towards Daddy, screeching and screaming. But it was green light, meow. The ground was covered with water, and it was very slippery. I heard a sound like sklip. I looked back. He had slipped. I ran over to trying to grab him. The beast ran over Daddy in an instant.
Aww.
It didn't stop until it was almost at the crossing. A human kid opened a door on the beast and ran towards me and Daddy. "Please help, Daddy." I meowed at him for help, but the kid tripped just a few steps away from us. I recognized him. His name was Park Sung-gun. He lived nearby. I often got goodies from him. He was a good kid. He would help Daddy for sure. I kept meowing louder and louder, and a few more adult humans in white coats followed him out of the beast. I thought they were all coming to help me and my Daddy, but they stopped at where Sung-gun fell and pinned him on the ground. While they were trying to drag him away, I saw a big dark red scar on the back of his neck. I had seen people in his home beat him. I didn't know he had been hurt so badly. Sung-gun was dragged away by the white-coated humans and thrown inside the beast once again. And then the beast just ran away. The whole time nobody had even heard me meowing for help. I saw Daddy lying in his own blood.
I almost couldn't recognize him anymore. I'm gonna cry. I cried.
Me too.
Please take Daddy to the hospital. Please. Someone. The humans walked by, glancing at us, and kept walking. It was like they couldn't even see us or hear us anymore. Some humans covered their noses as if they had seen a dead rat. They were not like this before. They used to like touching our heads with their paws. Why? Why? Was Daddy right? Were humans really not to be trusted? God, please help Daddy. Spotty.
Aw, that's so sad.
I thought the lieutenant would command me I thought the lieutenant would commend me for resolving a crisis on my first day. Instead, I was scolded in front of the entire office as soon as I got back from the scene. I was even told to write a disciplinary report, and it had to be at least 10,000 words long. I had always hated writing. I'd rather run 100 laps on the field. So I decided to simply Google similar reports online without the lieutenant noticing. After lots of copying, pasting, and rearranging, I finally completed the 10,000-word report. I felt exhausted afterward, so I went to the bathroom to wash my face. I could still feel the impact of my organs after falling on the cushion. Fortunately, I was fit enough to endure it. A regular person would probably have to stay in the hospital for a few days. I looked in the mirror and saw the Band-Aid on my face. I gave myself a proud smile. I was just getting out of the bathroom when I witnessed something incredible with my own eyes. Lieutenant Kang was holding a folder in front of him. Even though his face was mostly hidden behind it, I could still clearly see his expression from where I was. The cigarette he had in his mouth was slightly twisted. Some watery stuff was coming out of his eyes. They were, without a doubt, tears. Is this really the eccentric dictator that I had been hearing about? And should I leave the room now? Should I? Officer Min Jun had left the office a while ago. The lieutenant must have thought I had gone home too. If he saw that I was still in the office right now, would he kill me for saying all that? I was still struggling with the most difficult decision in the history of mankind when Lieutenant Kang closed the folder. I quickly hid back in the bathroom and didn't come back out until I heard him walking out of the office wing. I looked around the office and realized that I was alone. I couldn't help but start walking closer to Lieutenant Kang's desk without even realizing it myself. The folder was still on the desk. It was a red folder. It said Archives Criminal Investigation, Unit 2 on its cover. Unit 2. I had heard that a few years ago the entirety of Unit 2 had been killed in a violent incident. Afterwards, Unit 2 became the only unit in the Busan Police Criminal Investigation Department that had a designation, but no members. Some people called it a ghost unit. Due to the severity of the case, no one in the station would talk about it, especially the older officers who had been at the precinct when it happened. Why did Lieutenant Kang care so much about Unit 2? Had he lost some colleagues during the incident? Wait, why did I care? It had nothing to do with me. I should just mind my own business. I went back to my seat. I created a new document on my computer. Then I typed the title, Unit Transfer Request. But I couldn't think of another word afterwards. My brain was totally blank. It must have been worn out from writing that damned report today. I was straining my brain to figure out what to say next, when a big hand slapped my shoulder. Yo, the new guy at Unit 4 is working hard. I wish my people could be half as diligent as you. The voice sounded as loud and powerful as a booming bullhorn. I almost jumped out of my skin when I suddenly heard it behind my back. I turned around. It was Lieutenant Kim Jong-ho from Unit 3. I stood up from my chair quickly and gave him a salute. He waved his hand. Young man, no need to be so formal. Go take a bath and rest in the spa. Don't work too hard. I checked the time. I didn't even realize that it was almost 11 p.m. The spa room inside the precinct was even bigger than my apartment. It was incredibly clean. It would be incredible to finish the day with a hot bath. I breathed in the steam, looking forward to a relaxing evening. Then I took off my clothes and stuffed them inside a locker. I closed the locker door and turned around. Lieutenant King was right there. He just got undressed. He was in great shape with lean muscles all over his body. I didn't want to admit it, but when he was not screaming at me, Lieutenant King was actually a rather handsome man, despite being a little disheveled. I used to hear a rumor that, despite his peculiar personality, he was still able to keep his position in no small part thanks to the solid support from the female police officers in the Criminal Investigation Unit. I guess that made sense. I had already witnessed the female officers from other units smiling at the lieutenant in the hallway quite a few times on my first day alone. Why didn't anyone smile at me? Speaking of which, not only was Unit 4 a small team, it was also a sausage unit. If only we had an awesome female officer in the unit as well. I hadn't talked to Lieutenant King after he yelled at me that afternoon. Yet now we were standing in front of each other, completely naked. This was not awkward at all. We got in and out of the hot tub after a spa session that seemed to last forever. Then we went back to the locker room. We put on our clothes and we were about to leave. We never said a word to each other the whole time. I was hoping that I could relieve some of the tension between us.
May I write a letter to him?
Why?
I want to ask for a picture of his boss next time.
I suppose I was too naive. A piece of soap appeared out of nowhere and stopped near us. He reached out. I was taking my clothes out of the locker when I heard a noise. I turned around and saw what had just happened. My eyes involuntarily looked down. I looked back at myself, and then looked at the lieutenant again. This time our eyes met, and I could see something menacing in his eyes. Oh my God. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't even see anything. Okay, fine. I did see something. Okay, fine. Actually, I did see something. But I really didn't mean to. I was so screwed. Even if my request to transfer was approved, I wouldn't be able to get out tomorrow. Maybe tonight, the lieutenant would just kill me. Please, Buddha, please tell me what should I do.
What exactly did he see?
I have no idea.
I do. Chung Guan Mi. Okay. So we have a really funny cop story and a really depressing cat story we've got to fix. Let's see here. Let's see here. If we get rid of the slippery water, then they should be okay. I mean, the officer's not going to be okay, but hopefully the cat will live. Lieutenant King rolled his eyes at me and stood back up by himself. He then got dressed and left the locker room. I froze and stood there like a statue. If only I had reached out to grab him sooner. No. I should have gone and picked up that soap. Oh boy. Was my career over? Daddy jumped ahead just in time and the beast missed him, luckily. The beast kept running with smoke coming out from under it and ran straight into the next crossing. It was another red light. I saw the beast hit another smaller beast. The smaller beast was knocked off its path, and it hit a third beast. Soon the crossing was filled with all kinds of beasts, every one of them barking loudly. Daddy and I turned away and kept walking towards the street. Okay, so we both got their B ending. Let's see here, if we move... beast slipped in water and turned to its side suddenly, like it was drunk. Daddy jumped ahead just in time, and the beast missed him, luckily. But the beast had run into the rails not too far ahead and finally stopped on the grass. Soon a human walked out of the beast. He seemed to be okay, and just started yelling while checking his beast round feet. I looked at the beast. Its body had some words on it, but I couldn't read. But I had seen the sign next to it. I used to go hunting birdies with Daddy in a place far, far away. It was deep inside the mountains, but on top of the hill there was a building that smells like drugs. Daddy told me that it was a hospital, and it had the same sign as the one on the beast, so it might be an ambulance. So we know Paul Sung-gun was in the original letter being grabbed by the people in the strange metal beast, so it might be an ambulance that's taking care of him and his mom. I remember thinking the hospital looked a little strange. The humans inside didn't look hurt at all to me, but none of them would smile. Some of them would burst into laughter or tears all of a sudden. They all looked a little strange, not like the humans we met in the city. Humans were so strange. Okay. So we've got Daddy is alive, so he doesn't need the... Okay. So changing that, we'll see if we can get him to not fall. I pulled Lieutenant King up from the floor. Well, should I say something? Did that hurt Lieutenant King? That didn't sound appropriate. I was still thinking Lieutenant King swept away my hand. He mumbled something, then turned back to his locker and got dressed as if nothing had happened. I went back to my locker in silence too. What did the lieutenant just say? I could see that his face was all red. Maybe because of the heat? Perhaps he was just saying something like, "Shit, it's so fucking hot in here. That must be it." Okay, we're getting closer. Maybe if we move that one over. I accidentally caught a glance of Lieutenant Kang when I was taking my clothes out of my locker. Whoa. His body was really top-notch. It was still wet, and drops of water were streaming down his skin. For any woman in the world, I was sure that Lieutenant Kang's hotness must be off the chart. I didn't know what had gotten into me, but I reached out and grabbed his arm. The lieutenant stopped wiping his body, looked back and noticed me staring at him. He seemed to be asking me with his look, "What are you doing?" What was I doing? Strangely enough, I had no idea what I was doing either. I couldn't believe the air between us could get even more awkward than earlier in the spa room. This was a complete disaster. I knew I must let go of him immediately before this went even further. Before I could move, Lieutenant Kang reached out with his hand and grabbed my arm. I didn't know you were too. Let me take you to a great place. After we left the station, Lieutenant Kang took me to a bar. I would never have guessed that after that day, the relationship between Lieutenant Kang and I would turn into something completely unexpected. looks like we got a little achievement for that one. I grabbed Lieutenant King and tried to pull him up, but I slipped and fell too. We had to go back to the hot tub and take another bath to clean ourselves. The water was still very warm, but I was already used to the temperature after the first time. Lieutenant King wrapped his towel around his neck again. He didn't close his eyes this time, though. He just seemed to be staring blankly ahead. It was only the two of us in the spa room. It was so quiet again. Nothing else was in the air except the steam from the water and the awkwardness. Maybe it was my imagination, but Lieutenant King almost looked like a normal, accessible person for a while. I was almost going to ask him something, but eventually I decided to let it go. It was already after work. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it. Hey, look, we get it. We did it. That other one was kind of an interesting take, but I'm glad we got through it. Alright. So, I'm gonna cut that here. We'll pick up again later, probably next week. Thanks for playing with me, guys, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!